From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all of our previous episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast, and his name is Sean. And Sean, how the hell are you doing this week?
I see something I like, I take it. Something gets in my way, I kill it. And right now, I'm hiding out in your city.
So, floodlines aside, what have you been watching this week, Sean?
I have so much to talk about. I really don't. I've been watching a few things.
Oh.
I got some stuff on my mind I'd like to talk about.
Oh,
Let me start off.
gather around the fire, kids. It's time for Feelings Chat with Sean.
I didn't know this existed until last week. Did you know that there's a Time Bandits TV show on Apple TV Plus?
Yeah, I didn't know it was. Is it out already? I saw an advertisement somewhere for it.
The first 2 episodes are out, and it's pretty good. Like, the movie's okay.
Is it?
I like the movie.
I kind of like that. Is that Terry Gilliam?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking Eric. I'm confusing him and Eric Idle but I kind of like that Terry Gilliam weird English Monty Python bizarreness that he does pretty well.
Very well. Yeah. That
He
creepy
did 12
weirdo.
Monkeys.
He did. Yeah.
He did 12 Monkeys, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When he wants to be weird, he's pretty good.
Oh yeah, he can get weird. So I watched that first 2 episodes. I think the new one comes out by the time this episode goes up. I think the new one will be out. I believe it's August 1st that comes out. So it'll definitely be out by the time this comes out. I watched a movie with my kids because it was movie night and mom was away from the house. So I figured I could.
Nail Gun Massacre.
I suggested it, but it didn't go over. I had a few suggestions. There was the safe pick. There was like Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think I had some other one.
Nostril Picker. Safe pick.
I wanted to try and get them into Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but they watched the trailer and they weren't really into it. Considering what we just talked about last week, I was like, yeah, this would be a nice bookend to that little chapter. Instead, we watched I think it's 2019 Bo Burnham film 8th Grade, which is appropriate because one's going into 8th grade and one's leaving 8th grade. I don't know if you've seen 8th Grade or know anything about 8th Grade.
I have no idea. I know of The Grade. I don't know anything of this film that you speak of.
It's basically like a coming-of-age movie about a girl who's transitioning from 8th grade it's the last few days of her 8th grade year, and it's all filmed from the perspective of an 8th grader, so it's, all the stupid, cringy shit that kids do of that age. It's interesting. It's very cringy. The dad is very cringy. I can't remember his name right now, but he's an actor that you might recognize. I mean, that could be anybody at this point. So we watched that. Kids weren't super impressed. My older one cringed at everything that she could cringe at, which was appropriate because I cringed at a lot of it myself, but I'd seen it before. I just finished, before I jumped down here, Remembering Gene Wilder. I know you talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
So just finished that. That was a pretty cool little retrospective. And my kids watched that with me too, which I was like, okay, that's cool. They really only know him as Willy Wonka, I think. I don't think they know.
I was going to say, past Willy Wonka, I know when I was a kid, I watched him in the Mel Brooks movies like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, but I don't.
Yeah, Silver Streak and whatever that other one was.
I don't know if that's something that, kids of this generation would give a shit about. I tend to think not, at least not until they're a little older and can appreciate it.
I think it was totally the Willy Wonka connection that's the only reason they know who he is. And they're like, is he dead? I'm like, yeah, he's long dead.
He died, what, 3 years ago?
2016, I think.
Oh, okay.
Time flies.
I should know that. I watched this already.
Yeah. You would think you would know this. Other than that, really, I didn't have much else to watch. I told you about this. This is a podcast about consumption. I just got my Ninja Creamy, which sounds like something inappropriate, possibly. It's an ice cream maker thing. I guess it's all the rage on the TikToks and whatnot. I don't participate in that world. Been making my experimenting. I wouldn't say making, but experimenting with some low carb, low sugar ice creams that have been starting to turn out pretty good. I've had ice cream every day since I got it. So it could be a good thing. I'm doing protein ice creams. So they're low calorie, low carb, all that good stuff. Still working on a recipe. So if anybody out there has some good recipes or good bases for some low carb ice cream, hook a brother up. And then other than that, yesterday I went to Cedar Point and I walked around and got sunburned.
Are they doing their Halloween shit already there, or is it just still summer?
No, not yet. Still regular season. But yesterday we kind of went on a whim, and you look at those like attendance spreadsheets or whatever that people have online with the predictor of how many people are going to be there. And I gotta say, it was pretty accurate. We usually go like the Friday before Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
I don't know what the date is in that. And it's usually pretty like low capacity. Like there's not a lot of people there. You can get on stuff pretty quick.
Are you talking the week before
The weekend
Labor
before,
Day?
the Friday before the Labor Day weekend.
So that Monday would be Labor Day.
No, the week
or
before
the
that.
week before that. Okay.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, well, that's how we do things around here. So
It was like comparable to those crowds. It said it was 82 there. I sweat like a pig. It was sticky. I felt like somebody brushed me with like honey or rolled me in maple syrup or something. It was gross. Anytime my arm touched somebody else, it was like I had to pry it apart with like a crowbar or something. It was bad. Really sticky.
did someone throw up on you or something?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, well, that's probably good, although a little disappointing. I would have been amused by the story of someone barking on you.
I think I saw a pile of puke, but nobody did it on me.
I'm sure you did. I mean, that's par for the course, right?
You know where the Ocean Motion is?
No.
Oh, it's the pirate ship.
I haven't been to Cedar Point since I was like probably 15.
Oh, you gotta go.
It's been a while.
It's a good time.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
I don't need to go. No, I don't.
You should go.
Why? Why do I need to go to Cedar Point?
Because
I don't like
Ocean
roller
Motion.
coasters.
You don't like roller coasters?
No.
Why? Look.
Why the fuck do I want to wait in line for an hour and 15 minutes to ride a 30-second ride?
Well, because it's fun. But if you
Lots
go,
of things are fun that don't annoy me.
listen, if you go the Friday before the weekend of Memorial Labor Day, whatever that day is, in September, you can, in the evening, you can get on the Raptor. You can get on and you can just stay on it sometimes. Like you can just ride it multiple times because there's nobody there.
Oh, wow. That does not make me want to go.
You should go. It'd be fun.
I'm fine with not.
We went on a lot of roller coasters. We went on everything we wanted, except for a few things that were long waits.
Well, waiting sucks.
You could get the Fast Lane Plus. It's only $180 a person. You can ride anything you want. You just jump the line.
Do you know how many substances I could buy for $180
Hey,
that would be just
is
as
it like an
exciting as
adrenaline
going
rush?
Depending on the substance, it certainly could be.
I told my kids we could buy the passes, but there'd be no Christmas this year. And they didn't go along with it, so no passes.
So they didn't call your bluff?
I was almost just going to buy them just because I wanted to do it. And they're like, you could have bought it. And I'm like, okay, I just would have bought one. You could have waited in line. I would have just went in the front and rode it 4 times.
You want to get me to go? Let me go watch you like take this fast pass thing and just piss off your family, and I'll just sit there with like a couple beers and just watch them being all pissed off.
You
and
might be
booger-lipped.
driving
That would
me
be
back.
kind of funny.
You might be driving me back.
I'll sit there with a camera, just be like, well, this is
Look at this asshole.
live stream number 12 or whatever. So
But that's
that
all I
could be
got.
entertaining. Would you like to hear what I've consumed
I
in
guess.
the last week?
I guess.
You guys, I had some chicken for dinner. That was pretty good.
Was that the first number one thing consumed?
It's number one.
All right.
The band Omnigon dropped their newest album. It's called Feral. They're like a ska core California, like borderline angry, but I'm not sure they're angry. Like I haven't dissected the lyrics enough to really know that, but it's a pretty solid album. I listened to it once. I was like, okay, but I had to mow the lawn. And it's, short songs, so that it goes pretty quick. So I got through it like 4 or 5 times over the course of the weekend, and it's grown on me. I like it. It's a pretty solid album. So I like their last one more. Just had a little bit more like grit to it than this one does. But do you ever hear, you listen to more electronic stuff than I do, so maybe this doesn't translate, but do you ever hear an album and just think like, this sounds good on an album, but I guarantee you, like in a live environment, this would be like a fun fucking show to go to? Because that's kind of the vibe that I get off of this band quite a bit.
I can't say that's ever crossed my mind, but I've been to concerts where it's been electronic artists and it's been amazing. So sure.
I mean, maybe it's because I don't listen to a lot of electronic stuff, but so maybe I'm just talking out my ass because it's, that's what it's called, a podcast. That's what we do. There's certain like bands that just have like an energy behind them that feels like, okay, a live performance would convey this so much better than trying to contain it onto a album or a studio recording. And they're kind of one of those bands. And I missed them when they were here last year-ish. Maybe it was the year before. I don't know. I missed them the last time they were here, and I don't intend to have that happen again whenever they rumble through the Detroit area again.
Sounds like a promise.
Promise, threat, however you want to take it, we'll see what happens. On the viewing side, I went back and rewatched the movie Anaconda because Netflix told me it was leaving soon, and apparently that meant that I have to rewatch this movie that I don't remember how much I like or dislike. I gotta say, for a PG movie that came out in the early 90s, it gets a lot of things right. I'm 90% sure that John Voight is doing a Robert De Niro impersonation the entire time that he's on screen, which I kind of like that. And the snake looks terrible, but that almost like plays to the charm of the movie. It's honestly, it looks a lot like what you would see. I don't even know if Sci-Fi is still a live channel because I haven't had cable in a few years, but
Yeah, good point.
it looks like what I remember from the Sci-Fi like Friday night movie of the week type thing that they would do. I think like, 3-headed crocodile versus like 7-headed snake type shit. It looked like that, but with John Voight and Jennifer Lopez before she was like megastar Jennifer Lopez, and Ice Cube looking like he's going to crip walk across a boat to fight a snake. And, all that type of good stuff.
So tell me, on this rating scale, did you want some because it had buns, hun, or no?
I'd want at least one bun for sure. Definitely. 1 out of 2 buns.
Not to sidetrack, didn't Sharknado come out on Sci-Fi Channel?
Originally, yeah. I think there's like 5 or 6 of those movies, and they all started on Sci-Fi.
Yeah, there's a ton. Okay, I'll look it up.
No, I know for sure they did.
No, I'm saying it's still around.
Sci-Fi?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know if it's still around. It might be one of those channels that's just relegated to playing reruns all the time, too. So I have no idea.
According to Wikipedia, it exists.
Okay. Well, there you go. Do they still have original programming, or is it just like reruns now? Or does it not say in there?
I think they said, what does it say? I thought I just saw something they had wrestling on it, but I could be wrong.
That sounds right. Past that, though, the only other thing I've really been watching, so we're recording this on, was today, the 29th of July. So the Olympics just started 3 days ago. So really since Friday, when they did the opening ceremony, which I know you watched part of, so we can talk about that if you want. But really since Friday, most of my free watching time has been something Olympics related for the most part. Little breaks here and there because, sorry if we have any fencers that listen to this show, but fencing is a really boring sport to watch. I could do without that. But rugby is fun as hell. And the women that play it terrify me. I do not want any of them to run at me at all. Very intense sport for what it is. I really dig that it's like a super condensed, 30-minute sport. It goes by quick as hell, which is kind of cool. You're not sitting there for the entire afternoon waiting for a quarter, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, is bouncing between different Olympic things. Like I said, do you have any comments on the opening ceremony and whatever that was?
I thought the coverage was horrible, but just because they potted the volume down, or they turned the volume down on the music and everything that was actually going on, so you could hear the commentators, but the commentators being Kelly Clarkson, Mike Tirico, and Peyton Manning didn't really say much. Mike Tirico said the most, but he did the play-by-play.
Well, he should be saying the most. He's the one who's an actual commentator.
Yeah, but the other two said nothing of any substance.
Right.
And I don't know, it's just, I told you, I thought Kelly Clarkson, I thought they said Nelly. And I was like, Nelly Furtado is a host of the Olympics opening ceremony? Why? I just remember back in the old days, because, I'm old, the ceremony would be more of just the countries parading around inside the track of the place, and then they'd have some performance. And now it's you got to take the fucking torch on a boat to go to some other place, and they're doing surfing 16 hours away. Yeah, so this is the first year that I remember him doing the opening ceremony like this, because usually it's exactly what you said. They have some weird avant performances. They're talking about, whatever things that represent the host country, which is usually kind of wacky and interesting. I say wacky as an American who's that's weird. They do things that we don't. It's not really wacky. It's just wacky because we don't do them. Because we're uncultured.
Yeah. And then it's 3 hours of random people that they found on the street to clap for 3 hours continuously while all these Olympians walk by waving flags. And it's usually kind of funny because they'll pan in on the people doing the spirit clap along the way, and you can tell by 20 minutes in, they're like, oh fuck, why did I sign up for this? And then as it goes on, you're always waiting for one to pass out right there or something, but they didn't do that. Now, to their credit, I kind of like that they broke up the whole Parade of Nations thing, because like you said, they brought them in on boats, which whatever, but I like that while they were doing that, they had their, they had the big Lady Gaga burlesque show thing going on, which is all right, that's fine. The song annoyed me that she kept playing, or the chorus that they kept doing. I was please stop doing that. I kind of don't like this. But whatever. It's fine for what it is. And then they had like a Metalocalypse episode in the middle of all this when whatever metal band showed up and had flamethrowers and shit.
Gojira.
Okay. It felt like a Metalocalypse episode to me because they were on top of that big castle or whatever. And I was like, yeah, well, this just feels like Death Clock. Like I've already seen this, but I guess it's cool that they're doing it. And I don't know exactly what happened after that because somewhere around the time where they had some chick on a like garbage barge playing Imagine with like fire, and I fell asleep around there. But I woke up to people complaining about the something that happened. I was like, I don't know
The something.
I don't know what the something is, and I don't know why you're complaining. Like, it's a giant parade in the middle of France. Like, what's the point of complaining about this? What do we gain by, like, oh, that sucked. Great. Are you still watching the Olympics? Because who cares? Like, I mean, as far as ceremonies go, it was an opening ceremony. It was weird, and that's kind of what I expected out of it. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I've been watching. Got anything you want to tack on before we switch gears and talk about the title of the week?
No, let's put it in second and blow this pop stand.
Okay. So we're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about a movie that is a listener request, but I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. You get to wait until we come back to find out.
Or read
unless
the title.
you clicked on this episode. Or read the title. So we'll be back. Hey everyone, I want to take a second to talk to you about the Horror Friendly Podcast. The Horror Friendly Podcast is a film review and analysis podcast that talks to you about old movies, new movies, and a lot of stuff in between. The crew consists of 3 hosts, 2 of which are enthusiasts and 1 that is a novice, and they have a fun time breaking down horror movies from every generation. As August rolls on, we are coming up to the end of this season, and we want to ask you to keep an eye on their social medias for a chance to help them choose the last episode this season. You can follow them at Horror Friendly Podcast on Instagram and all the socials, and of course you can find all of their episodes at yourunpodcast.com. All right, so we're back, and if you didn't read the title card for this episode, this week we're talking about the movie The Hidden. This movie was requested by a friend of the show, Evan. He said, you know what you guys should watch is The Hidden, and I said, that movie starring Danny Trejo? He said, you're damn right. So that's what we're talking about this week is our, I don't even know how many times Danny Trejo's shown up on this show, but our umpteenth time with Danny Trejo wandering into a movie.
Not enough times.
Well, that goes without saying. So, as with the majority of our movies, we're going to start with the third-party review, and The Hidden is a movie that has third-party reviews, and this review is from Deli Sid D. Okay,
Deli
Sid D.
Deli Sid.
DELYSID. That's one word.
I thought it was like DELI. Like he was a guy that hung out at the deli.
I mean, that's what I thought when I read it, but that's not how he spells it.
Okay.
Anyway, Salami Cut D says, solid horror action flick, one of the better body swap movies. The ending is a little strange, but it's satisfying. It's like a long X-Files episode. It was okay. 2 out of 5 stars. I kind of feel like he was a little hard on it to give it 2 stars. He sounded mostly positive, but
Yeah, it sounded like he was up on it.
with that in mind, Sean, what is The Hidden about?
All right, so for that, we head over to IMDb. This gets a 7.0 out of 10 with 23,000 ratings. There's no number out of a number, so I don't know how popular this movie is because I don't even know what the scale is. But we go to the storyline and the plot. We'll do it the one at the top. I believe it's the plot. It says, a cop and FBI agent race for answers after law-abiding people suddenly become violent criminals. If we scroll all the way down here to the storyline, this is care of Anonymous. It says, an alien parasite with the ability to possess human bodies goes on a violent crime spree in L.A., committing dozens of murders and robberies. In pursuit of the extraterrestrial criminal is an FBI agent and the local officer investigating the rash of violence. As they close in on the vicious intruder, the city faces a brutal threat like no other it has ever encountered.
Aside from Danny Trejo, we also have returning favorite of the show, Clue Gallagher, in this movie, and some other fuckers.
Yes.
So I'm kind of surprised Dick Miller didn't pop up in this. Like,
Yeah,
that would
really.
just make the holy triumvirate. You have Clue Gallagher, Danny Trejo, and Dick Miller in the same movie. Does that exist? If that exists, someone let us know so we can immediately bump that to the top of our watching list, because I'm not sure if it does. Sean, who's in this movie aside from Danny Trejo and Clue Gallagher?
Well, who else do you need to know? I mean, it's a movie right there.
I don't need anyone
Instant
else. But
classic.
there are other people in this movie.
All right, so the top
quite
names,
a bit more than those two.
The big names that we have here are Kyle MacLachlan, who most people that listen to the show probably know who Kyle MacLachlan is. He's that dude from Twin Peaks. I forget what his name is in Twin Peaks, but he's in Twin Peaks. We got Muad'Dib from Dune. We've got Michael Nouri.
He's a David Lynch regular. He's also in Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet. Yep. Good call. He was in Desperate Housewives. He's been in tons of shit. Thing. Lots of stuff.
Basically the same story.
We also have Michael Nouri, who plays Tom Beck, the local LA cop guy. He's most often confused with Chris Sarandon in Fright Night, but this guy's not that guy. He was actually he's been in Yellowstone, he's in Flashdance, he's in Captain America, the 1990 version, because John wanted me to point that out. We've also got Claudia Christian, who's really high ranked on this list, but she's not really in this movie that much. And I was kind of expecting but
she's one of the more entertaining parts of this movie, for sure.
From the cast list, I expected her to be in a lot of stuff. She's in Babylon 5. That's probably the thing that most people recognize. And then there's a few others that are like, oh, it's that guy. So there's Edo Ross, who his name's not Edo, it's Ed O'Ross. He was in Lethal Weapon, Universal Soldier, Dick Tracy, Red Heat. He's a character actor. We've got Larry Cedar, again, another character actor. He's like the tall, red-haired guy that you'll see in stuff like Deadwood, or he's been in Community. He's been in a ton of stuff. He's another character actor. The other one is Chris Mulkey, who was in The Power. That's a TV show, I guess. I'm just reading this off IMDb. He's in Whiplash. He's a Captain Phillips. Wow. Didn't do a whole lot of research on what Chris Mulkey's in, but there's a lot of actors in this.
There's a lot of,
hey, it's that guy.
I'm kind of looking at it now, like this Catherine Cannon that's in here. I was like, she looked familiar in this picture and in this movie, and then it's like, oh, it's a bunch of stuff that I probably watched like Battlestar Galactica, the original series. Like I probably watched that, and yeah, it's a lot of, like you said, that guy or that lady type people.
So the one thing, Catherine Cannon, since you brought her up, the one thing I can point to that I can always recognize her in is she was Donna, whatever her name is, in 90210. Beverly Hills 90210. She was Donna Martin's mom.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's the one. So
I wouldn't have picked that.
Claim to fame.
Like I said, this was a suggested movie for us. This was a request, and this was brought to our attention in the context of being an extremely underrated movie. I gotta say, like, I troll around plenty of, horror things and sci-fi things on the internet. I hadn't even heard of this movie until a couple weeks ago. Do you have any experience with it or any insight on this movie prior to watching it this time around?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I don't know if I've seen this movie or not, but I feel like I've definitely seen clips, and I want to say that they had a clip of it in one of the In Search of Darkness documentaries. And the thing that stuck out in my mind is, this is going to come down like way later in what we're talking about, but Kyle MacLachlan in that like little silver gun thing that he holds.
Yeah.
And I want to say that there was a clip in Search of Darkness. So I don't know if I've seen the movie before. Now watching it, I can pretty much say with confidence that I hadn't seen this before, but I know that I had seen the clip, at least. It's like little snippets of it or caught little pieces of it here or there.
Well, I watched that documentary too. So if I was in there, then yeah, right there with you, man.
Uh-huh.
But I'm kind of surprised I hadn't. One, and I mean, we'll get to it, but like, this is a far cry from something that's unwatchable. Like, we'll just put that out there to begin with. Like, this has a lot more going for it than, frankly, half the things that we talk about. But it also, I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not. That just really minimizes a lot of the bullshit that we watch, but it's all for research purposes, for the greater good.
It's all, someone's got to watch it. Someone's got to talk about it. So, I mean, how the world needs to know about the nostril picker and Fat Guy Goes Nutsoid, and we're doing a service.
Absolutely.
And apparently we're going to include this movie in that list, but just at a much higher level. But I mean, the director of this is the same guy that directed Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which that right there, I feel like, I know for a long time, like a lot of people had mixed feelings on that. I feel like now, 40 years after the fact, basically 40 years next year, I think a lot more people see that movie as, for what it is and don't get pissed off about all the like gay undertones that I guess not undertones or overtones in it. But I think that movie is, I mean, it's a pretty solid movie from start to finish, like without breaking that down at all. I feel like that alone should have at least put this director's other genre work more on the map, like as far as horror movie stuff, sci-fi stuff, etc. And I mean, even looking at the rest of his movies now, like most of this stuff I don't really know. And I'm actually kind of interested to go back and I mean, it has a couple of Tales from the Crypt episodes, so I'm sure I've seen those, but I kind of want to go back and like dive into some of his other movies and see if they hold up. Because if the only two that I can remember are Elm Street 2 and this, that's a pretty solid resume. And I feel like it is kind of criminally under talked about, for better or worse.
We should also mention the director's name is Jack Shoulder, which sounds like...
I didn't say that.
Which sounds like a masturbation injury. But yeah, I mean, he's also done... he's done Mortal Kombat Conquest, the TV series. So, he's got a lot of high points in his resume here. So
it looks like he's got a lot of TV stuff in here from what I'm seeing.
Tremors, the TV show. He directed an episode.
See? Wishmaster 2, direct to video. All kinds of good stuff. You kind of touched on it a little bit. Do you want to try to recap what this movie is about in so many words, or do you want me to try to recap it?
No, I think it's basically the storyline says it all. A cop and FBI agent race for answers after all these people that had no records start going crazy. The movie starts out really bombastically with this bank robbery scene, essentially. It's all done from a security camera, so you don't see it. But this guy, he's just kind of standing there watching people walk in and around the bank. He pulls a shotgun out and blows away a cop and steals some money. And then the next, 10 minutes or so is just this crazy Ferrari cop chase scene where he's just hightailing it around Los Angeles.
I don't think it's quite that long, but it does feel like quite the fever pace.
Okay, 5 minutes. I'm exaggerating.
Sure.
But this solid 5-minute chase scene and all these crazy car stunts and everything. And as the movie progresses, you start to find out that Kyle MacLachlan gets assigned to the case, or he's an FBI agent from Seattle. He comes down to Los Angeles and he's working the case or whatnot with the local authorities. And he starts just bringing up all this information that just makes it seem very bombastic that like this guy that shot the people in the bank was he was working in cahoots with this guy that just happened to be in the same hospital room as him when he was admitted, after trying suicide by cop. And this second guy goes off and MacLachlan as Agent Lloyd Gallagher tries to, no, they're suspects together. They've been working on this for months together, and we have information with the FBI that says so. And it starts to unravel this mystery. At first, you're like, what exactly is going on? Like going in fresh, not knowing anything about the story, not reading all the other stuff in IMDb. You're like, what exactly is going on here? Why does something's up? You can tell there's something going on. You're just not quite sure what it is. And the story starts to open itself up to you, and you learn some things about all the different characters. But yeah, so it's like all these people that are just these common everyday people with no record, no criminal history or anything, start just committing these crazy crimes: murder, theft, robbery, assault.
They all seem to have a penchant for sports cars, loud rock music, and big hunks of like red meat, and ludicrous amount of like bullet spray.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned in my little intro, they basically, if they see something, these people see something and they just take it by any means necessary. If it means that they have to kill somebody, if they have to maim somebody, injure somebody, tough shit. I'm just taking what I want. I like that. I'm taking it.
I think one of the things that's done really well in this, like we talk about genre blending movies, and most frequently I'd say it probably comes up with horror and comedy. And this has some moments that are kind of funny and like a holy shit, they just did that kind of way. But this movie does an extremely good job of kind of blending. This movie really is more of a buddy cop movie than it is anything else. Like you have the FBI agent and the local cop who they're doing the typical, like, not in my jurisdiction bullshit. And then they kind of like have a pissing match. And throughout the movie, you see them kind of become partners, essentially.
Develop a camaraderie.
Right. But where it mixes in the horror and the sci-fi elements really well is they're always there and they're always present, but they don't really beat you over the head with anything on it until it's time to beat you over the head with it. And when they do it, there's a handful of scenes in particular that come to mind. The practical effects and the way they execute it, it's a really good balance of like, this is really over the top, but really plausible in the world that they've set up at the same time.
And they don't do anything ridiculously overt sci-fi until they do. There's no there's no UFO flying over and there's no alien, hallways and shit inside of a spaceship.
I'd go as far to say until Yeah, the little toy gun that you already mentioned, that's really the only over the top sci-fi thing that I feel like in this movie.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, the rest
cheesy
of it's kind of
sci-fi.
servicing the story.
Right. Well, I guess that does too, but that's the only part that feels, I would say that feels almost out of place compared to how everything else is presented in this movie. And I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and say this because if neither of us have seen this movie, I'm going to take a guess that, and I hadn't even heard of this movie, or if I had, wasn't aware of it. I'm going to guess that there's a lot of people that this might be an undiscovered gem for you. Maybe we should back this up and say you should have listened like 5 minutes ago, but there's a little bit of spoiler going on here. So I don't want to ruin this movie for you by any stretch, because this is a really good movie to go in fresh on, because it does a good job of filling in the story, telling you the story and filling in most of the holes in the story in a way that's satisfying, well told. And I'm sure if I went through and watched this again, I could start picking up, plot holes and shit like that. But on one watch, coming off of it pretty fresh, I don't have any major gripes about how the story's told.
While we're talking about all this and spoilers and whatever, this is a 1987 movie. We'll put links to some of the places you can watch this. There's not really any place that it's not on Tubi. It's not on any of those kind of services. It's all paid services. But if we can find something on like a Daily Motion or a YouTube, maybe somebody has some stray link out there, I'll post it. But otherwise it'll be posted in the show notes and you can click on it. Just wanted to throw that out there. This is not available really anywhere for free.
It is only like a $4 rental though. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not opposed to renting a movie, this is well worth $4 to give a watch.
Yeah,
sure.
It's definitely worth the $4. I mean,
yeah. So spoiler point now with it, like I said,
here forth.
As they're telling this story and you're seeing because really up to a point, you know something's kind of going on, but you can't really put your finger on it for the most part in this movie until they reveal shit to you. I'll just cut right to it. The way they finally reveal what's going on, that this is kind of think Night of the Creeps, think Slither, like slugs going into people one way or another and kind of controlling their brain. And as far as I know, there's only the two alien entities. There's the cop that you pretty quickly realize is not the FBI agent, or Kyle MacLachlan, who you realize is a little out there, and whoever
the other one is,
the bad guy is.
Yeah, the bad guy, the antagonist, the villain of the movie.
That changes several times throughout the movie.
And I think it's a really cool idea that they can essentially shapeshift. You always know who it is, but even Lloyd, Kyle MacLachlan's character, doesn't know who it is until they reveal themselves to him by doing something characteristic that this slug does, this entity does on a regular basis. So he's even in the dark a lot of times.
What they do really well with it, it's like any other movie. They gradually give you more and more and more until they have their big reveal. The things they do well with this is when they utilize practical effects in this movie, they do it pretty well. Everything, with the exception of one part at the very end of this movie, looks really fucking good. Some of it to great comedic relief, like when they shoot off a bazooka in a jail cell. That made me laugh my ass off. I don't know if you laughed at that, but I laughed at that.
If you go on IMDb and you look at the hidden, that's one of the clips at the top. You'll get to see that, so that you can get that for free. That's your taste.
Yes, there you go. But even when they reveal what this entity is that's taking over these people, it's a really good, gnarly, gross kind of scene. It's a solid 30 seconds, broad daylight. You're seeing everything that they want you to see in there, which is cool. I'm a fan of seeing well done practical effects that still look good in broad daylight when you can make that happen. I thought they nailed it, how everything looks in this. And then to be able to just flip the switch and go back to it's back inside whoever's next, and have you now knowing what's going on, under the curtain. I thought they played it off really well.
And even thematically, the movie will go from this kind of ooh, that's kind of gross. And then it's just snap of a finger and it's back to the carnage of this person doing shit that they're not supposed to. There's a lot of really great scenes in this. I think of all the different shapes that they take, my favorite one is the second guy, the guy that just looks like your middle-aged dad or whatever, Oh,
the heart attack guy or whatever? The triple bypass guy who does not last very long?
He lasted a bit longer than I expected, but he's just got blood oozing out of him. He's sitting at the bar at a strip club and he's just drinking drinks and the bartender's like, "You okay, guy?" And there's just this pool of blood next to his hand.
Yeah.
from where his arm is just leaking and he's taped it up with like electrical tape or whatever. And he's like, great. No, it's just.
What I liked about him is the way they explain how this thing moves is they basically say that this thing just like wreaks havoc on whatever body it inhabits. And once it's basically like drained it of whatever it needs in the body, that's when it jumps ship and goes to somewhere else. And that guy, if I remember right, the entity jumps ship without him being like shot up or killed or anything. Like he just is like, fuck this. I need to get out of this like Pinto and get into a Ferrari. It's essentially what he does.
Well, he had like some kind of stomach cancer or something. So there's.
Yeah, they say that he was having a triple bypass when it switches to him in the hospital.
Okay. And the scene, he's eating all that food and he's just rejecting it. Like, I can't eat this, but the body can't take all this food, but he just keeps eating it. Somewhat scary, but also kind of funny thing is he's like burping up and shit. And you can hear his stomach just like.
And you know what else that character specifically reminded me of for this? And there's kind of like I kind of wonder if this was like an inspiration for it. It kind of reminded me of Men in Black, the first one with the guy who has like the alien inside of him and he looks all fucking weird. He reminds me a lot of that dude from Men in Black. And even thinking about what Men in Black, those movies are, I almost wonder like if they pulled this or can we PG this up and make this like a family movie? Because it's got a lot of similarities to what happens in the Men in Black storyline too.
Did you feel like there were other movies that this either took influence from or were influenced by?
Absolutely.
What are some of the ones that you noticed?
Men in Black would be the primary one. Definitely Slither to an extent because of, the slugs and whatnot. I don't remember what came first, this or Night of the Creeps. I'm going to lean towards Night of the Creeps just because, but like that would be one that whether it took influence from or, whatever. Definitely that. And honestly, like just kind of buddy cop movies in general. Like there's a lot of that, like that DNA is, I feel like this is a buddy cop movie first and all the other stuff is second, even though they don't really take a back seat to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I got some vibes of the stuff too, a little bit.
I could see that.
Just maybe some of the way some of the characters acted, some of the ideas that were in the movie, some of the thematic just pieces, it's like eating them from the inside and it's controlling them after a while.
And it's definitely got that like mid 80s, like I say this from a place of love. Like a lot of 80s movies have that, like, let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. I feel like this is on the for better side of it. There's even little things that are callbacks in this that, like, they could be a plot hole that you would just kind of overlook because, like, I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but at some point there's a flamethrower that comes into play in this movie. And they do a really good job. I listened to something where they were talking about how this came up. Like, they actually had people come back to reshoot a, like, little throwaway scene that you would never think of where they have random cop, like, yeah, I compensated this from this motherfucker. So they explain how the flamethrower got in the police station in the first place, where, let's be real, if he just produced a flamethrower, like, at this point, I'm going to be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
So,
oh, okay. Seems about right.
Sure. But the fact that they took the time to actually explain how it got there and why he knew about it and why he's using it, I'm like, all right, that's pretty
for this type of movie. That's a pretty big deal.
That's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it feels almost like a weird lost episode of like Hawaii 5-0 or something.
Yeah, or even like X-Files or something. It's definitely got X-Files vibes
for sure, as mentioned by our guest reviewer.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but the second body that gets in, third body, I guess, is Claudia Christian gets embodied. And I don't know about you. I don't really like her. So when I see her in a movie and when I saw that she was in the top cast list, I was like, oh, I'm not really a big fan of her for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. It's her and that chick that was in Witchblade. You see her on stage and she's a stripper basically. And for me, I find Claudia Christian to be like chronically unsexy. She does nothing for me for whatever reason. So it was like, she just seemed like she was moving all stiff and stuff. And I was like, okay, even more reason for her to be hopefully taken out relatively quickly.
Do you know why she's moving like that?
No, please tell me. Is she like, she has a wooden leg or something?
It's either a better or a worse reason. I guess it depends how you want to word it. She lied about her breast size to get the part.
Well, I could tell she definitely had some kind of prosthetic in there.
Yeah, well, she lied about her breast size to get the part, and the director had her move like that to try that because the part was written for a very busty stripper is how it was put in there, and she's not that.
Yeah.
So they tried to make her move in ways that hit her chest, and that's also why she gets like the ass cleavage dress, because she doesn't have the chest to support it. So this is all about like 80s.
Doesn't it seem like you could just make an exception about that, you know? Oh, we got the best person for the job, even if Sean finds her chronically unsexy. That's fine.
Nope. She doesn't have big enough boobs. You got to have her dance weird and like she has a wooden leg or something. So,
but I would say her segment of being the killer, the criminal, the villain is probably one of the more entertaining personas of the whole thing.
It's also the only time that you see this entity have its own voice, like, or at least use it through
literally
the person that like that they're talking to. And her exiting the movie is one of the more entertaining, let's call it, is one of the more entertaining deaths in the entire movie, because it's one of those, like, it happens on a rooftop. You're like, okay, there's several ways this could go. And they went for the most, like, Hollywood way they could possibly fucking do it. And I thought that was entertaining.
And I think it was also great that her segment, she's like a Terminator, essentially. Like, she's just soaking up.
Yeah, pretty
she's
much.
A bullet sponge. She's just taking them in. And she's just one-handed, like shooting from the hip assault rifles and stuff.
Not that we've talked about this movie extensively on here yet, but it kind of reminded me of Lady Terminator a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
Just a little bit. I like Lady Terminator more, but it had moments of that. Do you have any negatives you want to harp on with this?
I don't think I really do have any major negatives. I do want to say that I think that the casting of McLaughlin and Norrie are pretty spot on. Kyle MacLachlan plays this awkward FBI agent, so-called FBI agent, and Kyle MacLachlan has an uncanny way of playing awkward characters to the hilt. Like, he is the most awkward person or actor or something, and if he's not, he does a hell of a job convincing you that he is. And Michael Norrie plays this grizzled LA cop. And he just, and it works out so well that you have this awkward FBI agent in Kyle MacLachlan, Lloyd, and you have Michael Norrie, Tom Beck, and they just counterbalance each other so well. And even though there's chemistry definitely there that they play with this, I don't mean to make this sound the way that I'm saying it. They play together well. They play with each other really well, and it just sets it so you have it tilting.
Keep expanding the hole. On it. You're going to make it sound better.
I'm sure. You know, you're leaning to the left with one character, you're leaning to the right with the other character, and they just balance each other out. It's a good team. All that to say, it's a good team.
I think my only negative with this, if I was I'm going to preface it with, it's not really that big a negative because it doesn't take me out of the movie enough to really be like upset about it, but is what we've already talked about, the spaceman gun that shows up at the end of the movie. It's kind of Mystery Science Theater in a lot of ways.
You think so?
Just a bit. It's not in the movie enough to really like it's totally the type of thing you're like, that's kind of cheesy, but whatever. The rest, it's one of those, like, everything else was done so well in this movie that doesn't like take me out of it, but at the same time I can't not notice it, to use a double negative.
I have to say, I like the fact that they don't use it as a get out of jail free card at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it still has to be used in a certain way. It has to, because basically it can be fired at people, but it doesn't affect them because it only affects the slugs, essentially. So you have to have a way for it exiting the body and the slug to be on the open for this gun to affect it. And they could have just been like, yeah, we kind of ran out of shit because it blows a hole in the wall. You know, you're like, how does it blow a hole in the wall, but it can't hurt a person? They could have just been like, yeah, you just aim this thing, you shoot it, anybody can do it. Oh, wait, it has to be your gun or something ridiculous, you know, like that. It has to have your DNA signature or whatever.
They make up some in-movie rules that they kind of play fast and loose with, and it works. So,
and there's not really any kind of MacGuffin in this movie. Like, the villain isn't going for anything in particular, and that's kind of what makes the story fun, because he just does whatever the fuck he wants. So he is not really looking for anything in particular. He's just kind of like, yeah, I'm just here to cause a bunch of chaos and shit happens, and I'll just go to the next place. No big deal. You'll follow me.
I'm actually really glad that there isn't. So, like, I'm so glad that slug doesn't come out at the end and is like, my people came here to win the Democratic primary and we're going to go.
Well, he does
take
kind of
over
try
California.
to do that, but
yeah, but I mean, that's not really the point of, you know, why he's there.
What would have been great is at the end, it would have been like Spaceballs, but the alien pops out and it just does that tap dance like across the floor.
That would have been great.
Slug. Yeah. We should be making movies. What are we doing?
I mean, technically that movie was already made because it was in Spaceballs, but I agree with you. Got anything you want to add before we start to wrap up on this?
No, I do want to throw out there, this has a sequel.
Oh, yeah. And I've heard that it's
I'm sure it's amazing.
Yeah. But I feel like it's something that we're going to have to get to eventually because that's what we do. We talk about movies that might or might not be worth watching.
Absolutely.
Well, Sean, then I'm going to ask you, what time is it?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro. Because it's hot dog time.
It's hot dog time.
You wrap the two of them together, or are you just going to...
Well, who's going to go first?
Whose hot dog is it?
I don't know. I guess it'll be mine.
I'll go. Okay, go ahead.
I'll go first. It's my turn.
Sure.
Like we're keeping score as whose turn it is. So I'm just going to say it's not very often you see a movie like this that really crosses genres. We talked about it earlier. You mentioned it. It has bits of that comedy, bits of sci-fi, little bits of horror, a lot of action in it. So that it kind of checks all those boxes. And not only is this a police and crime procedural, but it's also got this sci-fi stink on it. So I think that kind of is even more genre bounding. I cannot talk today. Genre bending. It's obviously not true to life, but it feels at the very least that the realism respects the audience. It respects your time, like to actually sit and watch it. The effects are really great, actually, for what it is. They're beautifully 80s. And the stunt work, I didn't mention this, but at the beginning, there's a scene in the car chase where there's a guy, they're carrying the typical pane of glass.
God, yes.
And one of the guys gets hit by the car and he does a full fucking flip from the side and it looks like he smashes his face on the concrete. I have no idea how that guy is not dead. So I had to point that out.
In the movie he's half dead to begin with. So
the stunt work is just it's really good. So I had a good time with it. I got to give it 7 National Pizza Weeks out of 11 hot dogs.
Was National Pizza Week part of the movie?
There's a sign in one. I think it's when they're in the police station in the break room, and there's this paper tacked up, and it said, "Hey, don't be sad or some shit. Or be happy. It's National Pizza Week." I was like, "Why the fuck is this here? It's amazing." I'll get a screenshot.
I missed that. So,
whose hot dog is this? Huh? Is it yours?
Yeah. So I got to say, Evan, first, thank you for recommending this for us because apparently neither of us were really that aware of it. And I will say this has probably been the most enjoyable recommendation that we've had so far. Honestly, this is the kind of movie that, like, I don't know how this totally has been off my radar for 35 years or whatever. I'm kind of disappointed in myself for having not seen it. This movie kind of has all the things I like. It's combining a lot of different genres. It's got a fever pace where there's never like a down moment. Like your most downtime in this is like 30 seconds. And even that, by that point, you're kind of watching it like something weird's going on here. So you're kind of like investigating every little thing on screen in the downtime. Like, something weird's going to pop out or whatever.
Could be Pizza Week.
It could be Pizza Week. It does a really good job of respecting your time while telling a really cohesive story and giving you a lot of great effects. The performances in it, top to bottom, they're all good. Danny Trejo's in it, even if it's for a second. Even with him only being in it for a second, it's kind of like funny enough that I think it's funny because of what Danny Trejo has become at the time. This is probably one of his first roles where he's, just there for a second. But it's fun. It's a good movie. It's fun. It fills in everything the way you want it. And yeah, I give this a solid 7 slimy mouth slugs out of 10 hot dogs. It's enjoyable. And honestly, if you're watching this if you're listening to this show and you haven't seen this movie, I'd say move this pretty high up as far as what to watch next, because this one is definitely worth tracking down and giving a spin.
Yeah, I think it's a real hidden gem, and I think that there are a ton of hidden gems out there, but it's always kind of cool when someone recommends it. So again, thanks, Evan. When someone recommends it and you can kind of dig it out for the first time yourself, you're like, holy shit, what is this? How come I haven't heard of this before? Why haven't I seen this?
Especially when you're talking about a movie from the 80s that both of us are so
wheelhouse.
That's where both of us grew up in, is 80s shit, for lack of better wording. And I say shit as a term of endearment,
I love shit.
I do too. But this movie does in a lot of ways, and I'm sure you thought the same thing. It feels like, how did I miss this? And for that matter, how does this not get brought up in the same conversation as Night of the Creeps and Slither and other movies that kind of combine genres? This movie really is a hidden gem. It's not perfect. I don't know that this is going to be anyone's favorite movie or anything like that. I'm sure someone, but it definitely deserves to be brought up a lot more than I've heard.
That's why we do this show.
Find
cool movies like this and sharing them with you guys, and you guys sharing them with us. So again, thanks a lot. Thanks, Evan. Much appreciated.
So with that in mind, while we're here jerking everyone off and, saying thanks, we also ask questions sometimes on the show. And this week we asked the question of kind of in a weird way. We said there needs to be more movies about space slugs. If you're not nodding your head yes, why the hell not? So basically we're saying why not more space slugs is the question.
Thanks for explaining it.
We're going to start over on X. There's only one response on X, and this week it is from Boomer, who is from Podcast in the Woods, also on You Run Podcast Network. You can check out all their stuff on there. And Boomer says, always more space slugs, land slugs, slugs in general. Send more slimy fun. He's on board with it. We're going to jump over to Instagram, and we're going to start with one of the crustiest of crusty boys, Old Nerdy Bastard, said, I would love to see a Slither sequel. How would you feel about that? A Slither sequel now, 20 years after the fact? I don't know that James Gunn has a Slither sequel in him, honestly.
I mean, it's not like he's lacking ideas, but it'd be interesting to see what he'd come up with if he'd be the one doing it.
I would love to see him do something that's not a comic book movie at this point. I think I've said this on this show, and I know I've said it to you. I really like James Gunn as a writer, as a director, as what he can bring to a movie. And I don't want to say that he's being underutilized by doing the DC thing and the, Marvel stuff, because I don't think that's true. I think those movies, at least the ones I've seen, have been more good than bad. I just want him to come back to stuff that I want to see, and that would be movies like Slither and so on.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see that anytime soon. I think he's in charge of all the DC stuff now.
He is in charge of all the DC stuff, and I don't think we'll see it anytime soon either. But I want it. Still on Instagram, Nevermore Hollow says, Space Slugs, hell yeah. Our friend Average Drewski says, what is in the sock? Yeah, there could be a movie about space slugs. Exploding deaths in space is always a great time. And then our friend Justin over at Pop Culture Reflections Pod, another great show that is on the You Run Podcast Network, says, well, if you're going to have movies about slugs, they might as well be in space. Good point. And then we're going to wrap question of the week this week with Evan, who suggested this movie. And he says, why not? I'll tell you why not. How do you improve on Night of the Creeps? Well, that's a good question. Can you improve on Night of the Creeps? I think if you were to take 3 slug movies that come to mind, being Night of the Creeps, Slither, and this, I'd probably say Night of the Creeps is my favorite of the 3, but I also feel like that's kind of splitting hairs. And I know you might have something to say about that.
I mean, I would say Slither is my favorite of those 3, if those are my options. But none of them are bad. Like, you couldn't do wrong watching any of them.
Well, and I agree with Evan in the sense that I say Night of the Creeps primarily because I like the 80s vibe. I like the Tom Atkins character in Night of the Creeps and all that. That's what I'm saying, that more based off old habits that die hard and what I know I like, where Slither has a lot of that stuff in it. But if I were head to head had to pick one, I'd probably go with Night of the Creeps. But we're talking the slimmest of margins, It's not like they're light years apart. Sean, I assume you're okay with more space slugs. Is that how you're answering the question of the week?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should just watch Slugs next.
We could.
That's nothing to do with space, but
I don't think I want to do that next week. But
I saw a guy at Cedar Point. He had a Night of the Creeps shirt on, and it had Tom Atkins on it, and I cannot remember what it said. It didn't say Miller Time. It said something else. It's one of his other quotes.
This is going to bug me.
Oh, Thrill Me.
That's it.
That's what it said. It said Thrill Me on it. I was like, he was going to the bathroom, and I wasn't going to be like, hey, bro, where'd you get the cool shirt? Are you taking a dump? Can I buy your shirt from you? It's just whatever. Take your dump in peace.
Can I buy your shirt from you?
Hey, can I buy your shirt? Mine's sweaty.
I'm just imagining some nerd coming out of the bathroom at Sierra Point, some guy bought my shirt.
Smattered with feces.
So in other news, if you didn't already know, I am also on board for more space slug movies or any slug. I don't care. Put it in a movie. I'll watch it. As long as it's not a slug in third person view that I have to watch wander around a forest, I'm all for it.
Deep cut.
Deep cut. Not that deep. They announced a sequel yesterday.
Oh, I know. My friend sent me a text. He's like, oh, you're probably excited about this. I didn't respond yet, but it's like, yeah, great.
All right. Well, that is it for this week. So if you are listening to this and you would like to request an episode, request something for us to talk about, it doesn't have to be a movie. It doesn't have to be of any specific genre. We're pretty much up for damn near anything. But if you want to request something, you've got to find out how to do that. Easiest way to do that, you can follow us on all the social medias. We're at Dewey Pod Monster all over the place. We take requests there. We take responses there. You can tell me I'm an idiot there, whatever you want to do. At Dewey Pod Monster is the place to do it. You can also go to our site, which is crap.town. There's a feedback option on there. We can send us a message directly, and we can choose whether or not to respond to you on there. Or you can find all of our old episodes at yourunpodcast.com. You can also find all the other great shows. I'm sure there's a messaging option in there, and if you find out how to do that, it will probably make its way to me. It might not. I don't know. Probably would, I assume. Sean, what else is going on here? Where else can people find us? What else can they do?
Well, if you want your question of the week answered or read on the show, you can follow us on social media, like John mentioned, to answer the question of the week. Also, any of the things that we talked about, any of the shows or the movies that we talked about in the first part of the show, you can find in our show notes if you weren't aware. We diligently notate every show and tell you all the crap we were talking about, and with links to where you can watch it too. If you want to follow any of my craft beer adventures, you can follow me at youtube.drafttherapy.com or on all social media networks at Draft Therapy.
So yeah, I'm going to go have a beer and have a hot dog and take a nap. What about you?
Blah, 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 blah.
Perfect. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
I see something, I like it. Oh, let me start that over, because that was fucking bad. I see something I like, I take it. Something gets in my way, I kill it. All right, what the fuck? Let me start that over, because this is totally spontaneous. I didn't write any of this down. I see something I like, I take it. Something gets in my way, I kill it. And right now, I'm hiding out. God damn it! I'm hiding out in your city. It's going to be so good.
You can't make me laugh like that when I have high proof alcohol in my mouth.
We have Michael Norrie, who plays Tom Beck. He's the local LA cop. He's probably most well known for being in Fright Night, right? Isn't he? He's not the guy in Fright Night, is he? Jesus Christ, I'm an
think
idiot.
he is.
Is he? It's not one of his top things.
We're going to put him in Fright Night, whether he was or not. He's in Flashdance. It's basically Fright Night.
When did Fright Night come?
87, 85?
Is he not that guy? Oh,
yeah,
man. Who
maybe.
is in Fright Night? Jesus Christ. I could have swore he was in Fright Night. This is all getting
I could have too. I thought he was.
Oh, that's
you don't
Chris
want to sound
Sarandon.
dumb?
God damn.
Yeah, close enough.
Okay, well, let me go back. All right.
He's in Captain America, the 1991.
Oh, the one, what's his face? The Roger Corman one? Okay.
I'm assuming.
We'll go back.
See, that's what you can say he's in, is Captain America.